we are celebrating our 74th birthday, the 74th birthday of the independence of Israel, where our prime minister at the time, David Ben-Gurion,
Yeah.
with so much pressure around him, he gets up in Tel Aviv and he gets up into the mayor's house, the mayor, Mayor Dizengoff, and he knew that by declaring independence, he would be inviting a war from the surrounding peoples, the Arab Muslim nations. And you got to understand the context that was going on, Brannon, is that we were just on the getting over the ashes of the Holocaust. There was only about 500,000 Jewish people living here at the time, and there was no organized army. There was very little water. There was no ammunition. There was no education. There were no hospitals. It was a very, very delicate moment in history. But David Ben-Gurion stands up and he declares, today this is the state of Israel. Only the third time in our history that we had an independent state. The first time under King David, 3,000 years ago. The second time under Judah Maccabee, the Maccabees, and this was our third time. So we were celebrating. We were celebrating with our aircraft flying over, with celebrations all around the country, and we did it. We've survived 74 years. I was actually wondering, I wonder if there are any 74-year-olds or older that are watching this, and I wonder, they understand that generation better than perhaps most of us. But the context in which it happened was incredible. In fact, there's a verse that comes to my mind from Isaiah chapter 66, verse 8, which says, "Who has heard of such things? Who has ever seen such a thing? Can a country be born in a day, or a nation be brought forth in a moment? Yet no sooner is Zion in labor than she gives birth to her children." And this was the birth of the modern state of Israel.
Wow. And who was the first nation to recognize this Jewish state of Israel in May of 1948?
Well, Harry Truman, representing the United States, definitely had a vote. There were 33 nations that voted for. There were 13 that voted against, and there were a number that abstained. But we salute Harry Truman, and we thank the United States in all these years for supporting us. Yeah, every relationship has its difficult moments, and we've had difficult times with the United States. But in general, they have been our, by far, biggest supporter.
But sadly, the joker in the White House right now seems to like Iran and agree with Iran and is giving Iran everything it wants.
Yeah, that's a problem. That is a serious issue. And we have got our eye on the situation with Iran. That is it's not going away. And until it does go away, we're going to have to come up with some strategies. It's interesting. I was watching the article before, Brannon, that you talked about the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
On our Independence Day, which is yesterday, one of our Israeli lawmakers, he actually goes up on the Temple Mount and he declares this statement. He says, "We must rebuild the temple."
Israel Today reports, here we go, getting ready, Temple Institute practices burning the red heifer. Israeli professor involved in the test of the red heifer ritual calls it an historical moment on the road to purity and redemption. For those who maybe don't know, Israel has to have a perfect red heifer. They had a breeding program here in Mississippi, which is right on the line in Mississippi, Tennessee. They brought the program to Israel. They're trying to have a perfect red heifer. I think they're getting very close. They must think they're getting very close because now they are practicing offering up the heifer as a sacrifice, having the ashes, and using the ashes to purify the temple. Why do you guys get so excited about the idea of the Jews setting up a temple and offering a sacrifice when there's already been a sacrifice? It's Christ. Hey, we agree 100%. We're not excited for the tribulation temple. That's not what we're excited about. What we're excited about is we are able to watch where we are on God's prophetic calendar. And one of the things you have to have in the tribulation is an Antichrist, a one-world government, a one-world economy, a one-world religion, the Jews back in the land, 1948, 74 years ago, and a temple, or at least a tabernacle, even if it's a temporary temple, and then making sacrifices. So it's not we're not excited that they don't understand the gospel. We're excited about the fact that we're seeing markers on the way to the coming kingdom of God. Correct, Aaron?
Yeah, well put, well put. Totally agree. We don't need, we believers, those who, you just need to read the book of Hebrews to understand that there is a once and for all sacrifice. And if there are any people listening, any Jewish people who don't understand the need for sacrifice, when the temple was stood under King Solomon, under King Herod, that's what the heart of the temple was all about. A way to draw near to God was through the sacrificial system. And we believe that the prophesied Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah, he was the one who took our sins based on the prophecies, especially Isaiah 53, which says that God will lay upon him the iniquities of us all. So we believe we don't need that temple, but like you said, Brannon, it is in the scriptures that there will be a future temple, and there will be a false Messiah, an anti-Messiah. So all of these are signs, and hopefully the idea of a rebuilt temple will serve the Israeli public's conscience, reminding them of the need for the sacrifice of sins. You see, today, Rabbinic Judaism, which was set up in the 1st century and the 2nd century AD. Rabbinic Judaism, when they looked 1900 years ago, they looked at the city of Jerusalem, and the rabbis back then, they were in a crisis because they looked at, there was no temple. The temple was destroyed. There was no priesthood. All the documents in the temple were burned by the Romans. And now there is no sacrifice for sin. So Judaism was in a crisis back then. So what did they do? They founded a new Judaism, and it's called Rabbinic Judaism. And basically, Rabbinic Judaism believes instead of the temple, the synagogues, instead of the priesthood, the rabbis, and instead of sacrifice for sins, it's prayer and good works. And there's nothing wrong with all those things. But the heart of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, is the temple and sacrifices, or the tabernacle and sacrifices. So that's basically Rabbinic Judaism today. Synagogues, rabbis, and prayer and good works. So I think a rebuilding of the temple will remind the Jewish people the importance of the need for sacrifice of sins. And also, you know, in Exodus 25, verse 8, the Lord said this. He said, "And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them." So that's a command back in those days. And so the Jewish leaders are calling and using that verse and saying, God is inviting us. He's saying, let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. I pointed out about a month ago another reason for rebuilding a temple. The Jewish people believe that in the same way 2,000 years ago when Herod's temple was destroyed, the Shekinah glory, the actual physical presence of God, was seen departing out of Jerusalem. They believe that by rebuilding the temple, it will invite the Shekinah glory back into the city among the people, that I may dwell among them.
And of course, you and I know, you being a Messianic Jew, me being a Christian Gentile, both having salvation through faith. You and I understand that God has a plan for the Jews, and that part of the whole purpose of the tribulation is to catch their attention and bring them to Him. They will believe in this false Christ or false Messiah, who then turns on them, the Antichrist. But through this, they see and believe, and then, of course, we see great revival break out with the Jewish people, and then the millennial kingdom comes. And this, of course, is one reason, as we often explain, why Satan so hates the Jewish people. He doesn't want God's accomplishment in the nation of the Jews and His ultimate kingdom that comes as we roll into that millennial kingdom. And if all the Jews are gone, that can't happen. And so that's one reason why this is a real spiritual battle when it comes to talking about the Jews in the nation state of Israel, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. There is going to be a satanic move, just like there was during the days of Pharaoh, when he tried to kill all the baby boys, just like during the days of Herod, when he tried to kill all the baby boys. And we're going to see more and more this spirit of Antichrist, many Antichrists, as well as the Antichrist. But there's another side to the picture as well, Brannon, and that is, I do believe that it's not just going to be the enemy, but I believe God Himself, in order for Him to bring a nation, because the scriptures teach that there's going to one day be national salvation, not just on an individual basis that we're seeing today in Israel. When I immigrated 30 years ago, there was only about 2,000 of us Messianic Jews. Now there's about estimated between 30, 35, 40,000. So individually, Jewish people are coming to faith. They're realizing, they're understanding, their eyes are open to seeing that Yeshua, Jesus, the historical man, He was the Messiah and He is the Messiah. But the scriptures teach on a national level, there will be salvation. And for that to happen, there's going to be certain circumstances. And one of those things, God Himself said in the prophet Zechariah, I will bring all the nations against Jerusalem. And I believe this is going to be partly, not only to fulfill His prophecy, but partly as a judgment against the Jewish people. Because, and I don't like saying this, most people know me as a tour guide. I'm an Israeli licensed tour guide. But while I talk about all the wonders and the incredible things that has been going on the last 74 years, the building up of our army, the water, we are the leaders in desert water in all the world, desert agriculture. We have nuclear energy, we have solar energy, we have so many people from our hospitals and universities getting Nobel Prizes. There's all these incredible things that we've achieved, high tech. But sadly, there's a lot of things that are going on in our nation. And it reminded me when I was watching, 15, 20 minutes ago, Brannon, that woman standing up, so proud to abort her baby. And then she goes and says, oh, by the way, I'm a woman of faith. I go to church. The script, my Bible says, do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. And sadly, even though the Jewish people still are God's chosen people, yes, they've been blinded in part as far as the gospel goes, but they are still God's chosen people. And as God's children, all good parents discipline their children. And that's going to be part of what's going on. We have 30,000 reported abortions every year here in Israel. We have Tel Aviv, which is considered the #1 most gay-friendly city in the world. In fact, just about a few hours ago, I led a Prayer for Israel meeting, which if anyone is interested, you've got my website details there. And one of the things in the United States, there was an article, this summer, the Jewish community are organizing summer camps. And one of the camps is going to be for gender children who haven't quite made up their minds what gender they are yet. So the Jewish community are organizing these kind of camps for gender children, these who haven't made it. My Bible teaches that it's the parents, the father, the mother, who should teach their children what gender they are, not leave it up to their own little 5, 6, 7-year-olds to make up their own mind. So God is going to bring use the situations when he allows and brings all the nations against Jerusalem to cause his people to turn back to him. As it says in 2 Chronicles, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then will I hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. And yes, there are religious, observant Jews who are turning to God, who are praying to God, who are believing God, but there is a big secular population of Jews among us, and they are just like that woman we saw. They are doing what they want, and they are, they're cast off restraint, and God has to deal with this.